Hello, fellow humans! Edelbrack Smith here, broadcasting from somewhere on that galactic dingleberry called Earth. Today we're reviewing The Turing Test by Bulkhead Interactive. But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on reviews, news, and interesting takes on all things Stadia and cloud gaming. The Turing Test is a first-person puzzle game that relies heavily on its atmosphere, provided in large part by the almost adversarial AI that is always with you. If that sounds familiar, it's because it should. Before we start talking about Portal though, let's take a look at a couple of other games that I couldn't stop thinking about while playing the Turing Test, both of which cause the player to question their assumptions and beliefs on a specific topic. The first is Bioshock. An atmospheric first-person shooter, it uses its gameplay and story to bring you to a shocking moment. This moment causes the player to think about the nature of free will, of player agency. Do you have a say in what you do? What does it mean that we control these characters, to do these quests without even thinking whether we should or not? It was an eye-opening moment for me, and I imagine for a whole generation of gamers. Soma is, on the surface, a bit like Bioshock. It's a first-person game where you play a character stuck in a series of buildings deep under the ocean. Something has gone wrong, everyone is dead, and monstrous things are stalking the halls. Soma is a slower game, however, focused on the atmosphere, the story, and the light puzzle-solving elements. It's also another of my favorite games. It uses its gameplay and story to make the user ponder its central question: what makes you, you? If you're cloned, is that clone you? What if it's like Star Trek teleporters, where your original body is dismantled and destroyed, then rebuilt somewhere else? None of the actual atoms were present in your old body, so are you you? What if the cloning doesn't destroy the original? Which one of you is you? Both? Neither? Throughout the story, I was given information and thought through it, ultimately making my own personal decision. Then, a moment happens. I won't spoil it here, and I immediately knew that my mind had changed. It was a slap in the face, an awakening of an opinion I didn't think I would agree with. It moved me, and I've often thought about it throughout the years since I played it. The Turing Test aspires to the same thing, its central question: can a machine, an AI, think like a human? It really wants you to know it too. The game is called The Turing Test, where the main character on the screen for the entirety of the game is named Ava Turing. Is she supposed to be Alan Turing's granddaughter? It's a weird naming choice. You'll also find random bits of correspondence from real-world people about the real Turing Test and the thoughts behind it. The problem is that, unlike Bioshock and Soma, the Turing Test doesn't stick its landing. Instead of leaving you with a moment of shock, of confusion as you wrestle with the new beliefs that are rapidly, violently forming inside your brain, it just kind of ends on a strange note. The mechanics of the rest of the game are just thrown out like they don't matter. It didn't really make me rethink what I had come to believe in that final moment, it simply made me a bit frustrated. Thankfully, the game does use these questions to create a fantastic atmosphere throughout its roughly 5-hour campaign. The Turing Test is, as I said, a first-person puzzle game reminiscent of Portal. And I do mean reminiscent of Portal. The mostly white science facility, the constant AI companion who may or may not be working against you, the gun that shoots energy and is used to handle puzzles, even the small hallways between puzzles that bathes the player in blue light and resets the gun. It's honestly a comparison that doesn't do the game justice. I booted up Portal 1 again to capture footage for this video, and I was instantly caught up in the charm and wit of the game, not to mention the rapidly more interesting puzzles. The Turing Test is not Portal. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but they have clearly taken a lot of surface-level bits from the game. The early puzzles, like any good puzzle game, are simple. They teach you the relatively simple mechanics that you'll be working with, and then gradually introduce more complicated puzzles using those same mechanics. Unfortunately, outside of the handful of optional puzzles, there really weren't very many interesting puzzles in the first half of the game. Now, your mileage will vary greatly here. Sometimes a person will easily get a specific puzzle, but have a lot of trouble with another. It all comes down to how you happen to conceive of the problem to start with. What I'm trying to say is that I am far from the smartest person you'll meet in a given day, and how difficult you find the puzzles in the Turing Test will differ greatly depending on the way your ridiculous human brain functions. So, I said that the puzzles in the early half of the game weren't the most interesting, but there is a wrinkle introduced in the latter half of the game that really changes things. So much so that I wish they had introduced it much earlier. I won't spoil it here as it does have story implications, but it saved the game for me. It adds a new dimension to puzzles that at times really had my brain working overtime. Oh, and do not sleep on the optional puzzles. They contain some of the hardest, most unique, and most satisfying content in the game. I won't spoil any solutions here as they are all a treat to work out. All except for the first one, which you can't really do until toward the latter half of the game when you find a solution in one of the optional rooms. Now, that would be fine, but the game isn't really designed to backtrack, so I ended up just completing the game, then using the chapter select feature to handle that one puzzle. It's the only thing in the game like it, and it just felt out of place. Puzzles may make up the majority of the game, but there are a few sections without them. Areas where you put away the gun and just explore the environment, like looking through the possessions of the missing crew or listening to audio logs recorded by said crew. This is where a lot of the story forms, so you need to take the time to look at everything in these areas instead of just running to the next door. Beware though, some of the writing you can find in the secret areas is kind of a spoiler for what will happen later in the game. Now personally, I don't think it ruined anything for me, but it is something to be aware of. I played the game at first with a mouse and keyboard, and then with a wired Stadia controller on my main PC. It ran extremely well, though it felt slightly more enjoyable with a controller. Normally, I'm a mouse and keyboard guy, but the slow pace of the game lent itself well to leaning back in my chair with a controller in hand. Now, I also spent a bit of time playing on my Pixel 4, though not as much as with other games. When playing games on my phone, I tend to prefer ones where I can turn off the sound and still enjoy the game. This is mainly because I'm often sitting next to Mrs. Edelbrax on the couch while she watches TV, or lying in bed before sleep, or playing while I'm watching some YouTube videos. The Turing Test's best moments come from its narration, not from the puzzles, so I spent most of my playtime on the PC. You would be forgiven for thinking that I didn't like the Turing Test, but that isn't the case. I greatly enjoyed the themes and questions raised in the game, and I also enjoyed the puzzles in the latter half of it. I just wish it had done more with those things. If they ever came out with a sequel, I would be excited to see what they were able to do with it. What's here is good, but it fails the Portal test, i.e., is this game as enjoyable as Portal? It feels like the developers swung for the stars and didn't quite make it. It's still a fun adventure, and for the high price of free on Stadia right now, there's absolutely no reason not to check it out yourself. Have you played the Turing Test? If so, what did you think of the puzzles? Did you find them more enjoyable than I did? Answer in the comments below. If you haven't played it, the game is free on Stadia Pro right now, and Stadia Pro is free for 2 months, so now is the perfect time. Go play it. Meanwhile, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more reviews, news, and interesting takes on all things Stadia and cloud gaming. Edelbrax Smith, signing out.